You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 470, our final hype episode for the premiere of The Bad Batch Season 2. So we're just literally hours away before we get the first and second episodes of The Bad Batch. And if you had a chance to listen to our final episode from the first season and the follow-up Patreon episode, we kind of expressed our grievances with what we thought really worked well in the show and what didn't, as well as spent a lot of time talking about Mount Tantiss and Heir to the Empire. And we're going to get into all that because Jonesy's, it's like one of his favorite topics is when I bring up this idea that somehow we're going to get into Heir to the Empire as a retelling of that story in this Disney era of Star Wars television. But, and yeah, so maybe we will. But nonetheless, we did spend a lot of time talking about things that we felt like didn't get wrapped up or things that we were looking forward to happening in season 2. And now that we've got all these teasers and we've got like 2 full trailers now, it's about time that we pull the Band-Aid off and really get to the hype and talk about what it is that we're looking forward to here going into season 2. And drinking from a bowl is the hype himself. Mr. Jonesy's with us tonight. Jonesy, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Like you said, I'm drinking out of this fishbowl of a Kenobi mug that a dear friend of mine got me for the holidays, Mr. Albert Padilla.
Oh, well, you're welcome.
Swinging fences. This is a gigantic cup of tea.
It's very, very large.
I think it's meant for soup.
Cannot see it.
I'm convinced it's meant for soup, but I'm drinking tea from it.
Tea, coffee, bowl of cereal, whatever you got to put in there. I mean, that's
right.
Yeah, that's like a multi-tool.
You could feed pets from it. It's fine.
Yeah, food bowls if you want to.
I would love it. Yeah, no, man, exciting show tonight. Getting ready for a Bad Batch later tonight. Crazy. Coming out of the holidays, coming out strong. Bad Batch, 2 episodes tonight, right? We did confirm it's 2, not 3.
2.
Confusion there on our side. Yeah, 2 episodes coming out tonight. Pretty exciting. And then we'll be back at this on Thursday to bring you our response to that, our reaction, our review, our breakdown, whatever you want to call it. We bring you all the things.
All the things will be here on Thursday for this. So actually, you're getting 3 episodes this week, I should say. You're getting 3 episodes this year, too, to be fair. But we plan on doing more than 3.
At least 3.
So,
and you're wondering if we can't count because that's only 2. Well, no. Ms. Lauren posted, it might still be processing, but she's got the Battle of Jeddah, the audio drama, posting right now out on the YouTubes, cantinacast.com/YouTube. So if you want to get her, you have to go get this review from her. All good things about the Battle of Jeddah from George Mann. A really good audio drama. Finished it just last week as well. So you're going to want to hear her feedback and her comments there. You can get that at cantinacast.com/YouTube. You will not want to miss it.
And that is available now. So if anybody is wondering, I think you can hit pretty much all of the, Apple Books and Google Books and everything else. Audible's got it already as well. So you can download that, buy it, purchase it, listen to it. And I have not had a chance to listen to it. I've heard some positive things about it in terms of the quality and certainly on par with the other audio dramas as well. So if you enjoyed some of those like Tempest Runner and Dooku Jedi Lost, this is going to be more of the same, I would say. Jonesy, you can keep me honest here, but more of the same and good production quality.
I mean, the voice acting is always, it's an audio drama. So if you're not used to that kind of thing, it might take you a little time to settle into that. But
yeah, not an audio book, to be clear.
Right. Yeah.
They're very different.
Right. Yeah. So it's got a full cast, which is what makes it both interesting and different if you're coming from audio books, especially if that's your primary way of consuming the books. It's not just Mark Thompson reading everything. Mark Thompson is just one of the voices of like 24 people in the whole production. But pretty good story. It suffers from a few of the same things audio dramas seem to suffer from, but overall, I think it's a worthy entry into High Republic and getting us. I think this is the first official movement into Phase 2, Wave 2 rather, of Phase 2.
Phase 2.
Yeah, so pretty strong entry. George Mann also did Quest for the Hidden City, which Lauren also has a review queued and ready to go that will come out, I believe, later this weekend, maybe this weekend, something like that. So be on the lookout for that here in the coming days as well. You're not going to miss that. She was super excited about that one, so I'm really excited to hear what she has to say about that one.
Yeah, and thanks, Lauren, for knocking that out. I know she was burning the midnight oil and trying to get that out quickly because given today was release day. So kudos to her for getting that up, and solid job on the review. I had a chance to listen to it or watch it. I actually was kind of listening to it, not necessarily watching it because I was doing some other things. So, but she did a bang up job as always. So if you're not following Jedi News Archives, that particular stream on our channel, swing out there and subscribe and get all those video content.
Yep, it's got its own playlist. It's got its own section on the website. So all the different ways you can make sure you go see all of Lauren.
Yes, and we've I think we mentioned, well, we've talked about her being a full-fledged member of the show, but we put some work in over the weekend to kind of lock down the schedule, and so you'll be seeing her face here on the main show at least once a month, maybe even on some Patreon episodes. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting her on her because she's always got a very unique perspective on things. She keeps us grounded, I think, at times. At
Absolutely.
least I tend to head out there and
well, she's like if you ever needed a partner when it came to shipping couples, though.
Yeah,
like you guys are dangerous.
My bro. I don't know what that is. Okay. Let's see. So news, we talked about the Jedi News Archive, the audio drama coming out. You had a interesting night prior to this. Like you're swinging into hour number, 3 or 4 of podcasting this evening.
Yeah, I had the really unique opportunity of sitting down with Stargate Pioneer on the Better Podcasting show earlier this evening on their live stream, talking about podcasting, but also from the Cantina Cast perspective as well. So if you're curious more on the podcast sausage being made, that we kind of hint at and we pull the curtain back from time to time. But if you want to go have a more like, this is how you podcast, or these are the things that go into podcasting and those types of conversations with a Cantina Cast and Star Wars flair to them. Talked a lot about celebration, a lot about equipment, different things that are great. Some of the challenges that we face with fans and the kind of the environment that we operate in these days, and the story of Cantina Cast a little bit, kind of the history and the path that we've gone here. So a lot of fun though. Our SP has been a longtime supporter of the show. Him and Mike know each other back when Mike had a show about podcasting. Apparently. Which I wasn't quite clear to me, but apparently that's how they met back in Indiana or something. And so really cool kind of getting that aspect. So really long time supporter of our show. He's been a huge help for you and me for, getting equipment established, especially early on, and just feedback. And anybody, when we need we have a podcasting question, SP is towards the top of that list of people we go to. And there's no better single source of how do you go, where do you go to get good podcasting content about how to do this than Better Podcasting. So really appreciate the opportunity. You can go find all that over at betterpodcasting.com. That should get posted here in the coming days. Not sure their exact schedule, but would love for y'all to go check that out and make sure that you tell them we sent them from the Cantina Cast.
Yeah, SP's a great guy. Not only has he been a contributing member to our Discord server for a number of years now, like you said, I think he's a Patreon member too, if I'm not mistaken. He used to be anyways.
Yes. Yeah.
And then on top of that, yeah, he's I've had the privilege of having him on the basement for a couple of episodes. And so getting his perspective on some of that culture and growing up in that era, it was really great. So some really good episodes there from a podcast that, I don't make New Year's resolutions so much as I make goals. And the only goal I had this year was to bring that show back. So I will declare it here now, some way, one way or another. I will have the basement return, pick that up where we left off. I don't know who's going to be on the show and all that. And sorry, I didn't mean to turn this into to me, but it just, people like SP really made that show great, and you yourself included, and Mike and everybody else. So I do want to get back to that. And he's somebody that when I think about, okay, if I'm going to reboot this thing or at least bring it back and resurrect it, he's at the top of the list of people that I want to bring back on to kind of help co-host with it. So.
Yeah, you had a lot of great people on that show.
Yeah.
So, Will, do you need an accountability partner?
Yeah, I actually do.
Okay, I'm going to hold you accountable to get this thing launched. Let's
set
a date right now. When are we going to get this done by?
You're a little too hard, too fast for mine.
Okay, all right. We'll ease off the gas. We'll reevaluate in December.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. I'll pull a Book of Boba Fett. I'll release the first episode January 31st of 2023.
just to say you met the goal.
Just to say I met the goal of 2023. Yeah.
And then you'll make it into a Cantina Cast spinoff show in the middle of it.
That's a good idea. The book of
It'll just become Star Wars again.
Yeah, something. All right. Well, no, great stuff. Hope to see that once it's been posted or downloaded, once it's been made available on audio.
All right. So, hey, a huge thanks to all of our supporters here. We were talking about SP, but all of our Patreon members. We have 2 new ones that since the break came out, and Matthew Maher and JJ Skywalker. And JJ is actually with us here in the chat. Has been for the last many weeks now.
Hey,
awesome. Yeah, both joined up over at the After Dark tier. So thank you so much. And I think JJ actually signed up on Christmas Day. So what an amazing Christmas gift. So thank you guys. We hope you're enjoying some of the content that's out there. We hope you went out there and listened to Chewie and the Pogs. It's still pinned. If you're a Patreon member at the $2 tier and above, you can go and listen to that. It's pinned with a link to be able to get to it. If you can't find it, message us on Patreon. I will go and give you the link directly if you need it. But are now part of the tribe members, of course, Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, Jackson, Shark, Man, Dan, Daz, and Isabella. And then Delusions of Grandeur, of course, Rod, Kathy, and Hard Counter. Thank you all so much for your continued support. It means a lot to us, and looking forward to 2023.
Yeah. And JJ, just to be clear, the Christmas gift was to us, not that you received the Christmas gift of hearing our lovely voices and paying for that. It's just
I think it was a pretty fair exchange. If he got to go listen to Chewie and the Pogs.
That's true. That's not that's Mike. So you can't put a price on that, honestly.
It's a holiday tradition.
Well, in some families it is, yeah. Some circles, some dark circles and dark families, it is a...
that circle continues to expand because people went out in Discord, cantinacast.com/Discord, and they were actually posting pictures of their kids reading Chewie and the Pogs. And all I could think of, and this was Uthal, I believe, did this just recently. I'm like, well, did you have the audio companion with it?
Yeah.
I mean, they just go hand in hand, man.
They do go hand in hand.
Yeah,
well, thank you again.
Quick shout out to Katya. I know she's got to get to sleep, but she's saying hi and bye. So thanks for chiming in, Katya.
She's always willing to drop in, say hello, and then bounce because
it's so kind of her. Yep.
Super late over there. Okay, let's get into the main show. And what we do on these shows is we're going to kind of go over what I call the tail of the tape, with just kind of like some numbers and kind of give you the breakdown of what the show is going to look like in terms of number of episodes, the creative people behind it. You will get into some of the actors, the cast, that sort of thing. And then I want to kind of shift over into some of the more recent articles. Now, to be fair, there hasn't been a whole lot of like conversation, a lot of things being posted about the Bad Batch until today. Like today has just been this massive overload of articles and reviews and stuff. And I think they purposely held out on that because we're coming off New Year's Eve.
Is that a casualty of the holidays?
Casualty of the holidays, right? So they kind of saved everything and for this Tuesday. And so we just got this tidal wave of all kinds of stuff. And so it was really hard to kind of pick and choose what to kind of focus in on. So
I remember this was supposed to be out like in fall of 2022, I think.
Yeah, the original trailer says fall of 2022.
Right.
Yeah. But we went and picked out some of the more, I guess, talkable. Is that a word? Talkable quotes. Things that we can talk to you about from some of the different articles. Then we'll get into some of the tried and true stuff, like the Razor Crest moment and some of our predictions and things that we're looking forward to and all that. We'll kind of end there, anchor the show on that. So, and I know you're laughing because you probably looked at one of the questions there.
Every day is a surprise with you.
Well, I already shot my shot at the very beginning of this episode, so I'll have to figure out a way to work that back in here some way. Okay, so this whole thing, 16 episodes. If you're not familiar, 16 episodes. Of course, it premieres tomorrow. We're going to get the first 2 episodes, and we will be talking about the titles of the episodes probably throughout this episode tonight. And we probably are going to talk about some of the things that have been confirmed either through some of the articles. Oh, no huge spoilers. I can assure you of that, right? There may be some things that we may be able to infer from some of that, but again, it's pure speculation on our part. We've not seen any screeners. We're not going into this with spoilers by any means. So the first 2 episodes, Spoils of War and Ruins of War, will be tonight. They do 2 more episodes back to back, February 8th, which is the Clone Conspiracy, Truth and Consequences. And then the finale will be March 29th. 2 episodes called The Summit and Plan 99. And that'll round out this 3 months of Bad Batch blitz that we're going to get here. Any of those titles stand out to you? I mean, I think a lot of these really do, and we haven't had a chance. We brought it up, I think, on the episode before we did the break, kind of like the year in review, maybe, or something,
Right.
because it had just been announced. But we really haven't had any time to spend talking about the titles. And I would say, for the most part, they're pretty safe. I don't think there's a lot of things that make me think like, "Ooh, I know what that is," or I know exactly what scene that was from the trailer, right? But what do you think when you look at some of this stuff? Anything catch your eye here?
I think we mentioned this before. Actually, those titles aren't the most interesting to me. It's some like episode 11, Metamorphosis, right? That
Yeah.
one's just, I mean, you could do a lot of different things with that, what that means, especially, and we'll talk about some of the articles that had some interviews today that I think were really interesting that, again, might fit into some of this as well. But also episode 5, Entombed, and episode 3, The Solitary Clone. And again, that you could make a lot of infer about who that is because we've seen a lot of clones on the trailer, so in the teasers. But I think those are really interesting. But again, that the clone conspiracy, I think that is one that does stick with me, though, of this idea of the clone conspiracy still being a lingering after effect, even a year after Order 66, which is about when this takes place. I believe that's correct, right?
Yeah.
This is about a year
We're
removed
still in
now.
the very beginning stages prior to Obi-Wan Kenobi and
Yeah.
Andor. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, but it's still, I like seeing that too, because again, it just gives you that connectivity with Clone Wars and even forward to Rebels as well. And I just like that you still have all of this connectedness between it. It does feel like one story, and we're just picking up a different part of that story, but there's very clear links between them all. And so I like that they continue to do some of that. What stood out to you about these though?
Well, I want to start with that one, or just kind of piggyback on that. The clone conspiracy, like, I wonder if they're going to pull a fast one on us and kind of change the context or the meaning of that. And where I'm going with this is there is a line that's uttered a little bit later that we're going to talk about in one of the trailers where I think it's Cody talking to, and yes, Cody is going to be in this.
Yeah.
Cody is talking to Crosshair and mentions that there are clones that are kind of rising up, right? Turning their backs, if you will, against the Empire, not really aligning with the Empire for whatever reasons, malfunctioning chips, their conscience is getting the better of them, whatever it is.
Questioning the order, I believe.
Questioning the order, I think, is what it said. And so when I see the clone conspiracy, I wonder if it's the conspiracy more about the clones and the conspiracy to overturn the Empire or go against them in some way, right? That could lead then into something like Truth and Consequences, where they're kind of facing the reality of what is the current state of the clones and what is it going to mean? Are they going to systematically start shutting them down or killing them off, really? Because they're a risk.
Decommissioning. I guess we've already decommissioned, but now we will actually, I guess put them down is probably appropriate.
Yeah. So I think that one stands out. Metamorphosis stands out for me too. My head immediately goes to who could be going through a metamorphosis?
Kino Loy.
Kino Loy. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I was thinking, leaning more into somebody like a Crosshair, or somebody who maybe even like a Cody being reconditioned, right? The metamorphosis process of getting out of whatever the chip removal, or maybe it makes more sense for Crosshair, because if we take him at his face value, right? If we take at him his word that he had his chip removed,
right,
then that's more psychological, emotional that he's going to have to go through in order to get past all of this and come back to the team. But
yeah, and it could also come back to Omega in some way too, right? I mean, it could be, we know we're going to get a little bit older Omega. So is there something that's going to be some catalyst in hers that blossoms into something? Is she finally going to have a superpower?
I think we ruled out Force sensitive, or at least maybe I think Filoni did or somebody, but
yeah, I know, but I mean, you're still hanging your hat on all this stuff.
Yeah,
she's got some special power in some special way.
Until it's confirmed, you're gonna have to pry these theories off my cold, dead hands.
Right now, her special power is like intuitiveness.
Yeah, and gambling or strategic strategy games of some sort.
No, gambling works. Yeah,
Battleship. Okay, yeah,
Battleship.
Risk. The other one that stands out is the Summit, because I think Mount Tantiss. Okay.
Right.
But then Plan 99, what that could be. I mean, there's a whole lot of things there. Plan 99, it's the upside down 66. So maybe it's the reversing of the Clone War or the clones, and
kind of a play on Clone Force 99, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a variety of things that could be. It could be pretty innocuous.
Yeah. I mean, and Plan 99 could be some kind of, maybe that's the code name for, the Snoke project, whatever that is, right? Trying to replicate clones and imbue them with force abilities in some way. I think that's kind of where we landed as far as theories, conspiracies go at the end of last season, which we'll get back to here in a little bit. I want to rehash some of that stuff. So good stuff there. Let's see. Okay, so without those are the episodes. The writers. So there's a group of writers here, but Jennifer Corbett, should be no stranger to anybody here that follows Star Wars animation. She's coming back as the primary writer. Brad Rao is the primary director on these episodes. They're both executive producers, as well as Dave Filoni and Carrie Beck. Again,
Right.
names that should not be unfamiliar to you in Star Wars.
Carrie Beck is almost single-handedly responsible for bringing Clone Wars back.
Yes. Yep. And she did a lot of work on Rebels and Resistance and just about everything since the Disney Plus era as well.
Yep.
So the music, though, I wasn't able to find a lot of good information here on the music. I don't think anything's been confirmed. At least I missed it. And maybe they released something a little bit later. But as a reminder, it was Kevin Kiner who did season 1, as well as his two sons, Sean and Dean. They had Peter Lamb, Nolan Markey. All this is to say that I really loved the music in season 1. So from what I've heard of in the trailers that they've done with season 2, it sounds like it's just an extension of that. So
yeah,
I'm totally fine with. I think I'm going to really enjoy the music there.
Yeah, some of the music at the very end of season 1 was absolutely epic.
Yep. Okay, and then the cast. Of course, we got D. Bradley Baker, voicing everybody. Really,
never heard of him.
Yeah, Bad Batch guy. Michelle Lang is returning back as Omega. We got Rio Perman coming back as Sid from Cheers. Excuse me. And then Noshir Dalal is coming back as Vice Admiral Rampart. So he was a kind of like the baddie that was introduced probably early on, but then he had a couple episodes scattered throughout. And of course, at the very end, he was responsible for pulling the trigger, almost literally, of blowing up Camino there at the very end of that season.
Yeah, definitely trying to get rid of the clones pretty much the entire series from the moment he stepped on the screen.
Yes. Yeah. More in line with using the inscripted soldiers.
Right.
And then we've got Wanda Sykes, who is coming in as Fee Genoa. And I have not heard her name officially said yet. So apologies if I screwed that one up. Yeah,
she's the character you see in the trailers that you probably don't recognize or you haven't seen as much of before.
Yep.
So
yeah, and she seems to be
new character for Wanda Sykes. Yeah, I mean, Emmy Award winner, of course. Very well known. So it's really cool to have such a well known actress, be part of the series.
Yeah, and when I think of somebody like Wanda Sykes, I think comedy, right? I think that's what she's probably best known for. So I am looking for her to bring a dose of that here and bring some, levity to a lot of the scenes. So should be good. And then beyond that, we'll get into some of the other character appearances and cameos here in just a little bit. We'll make that part of kind of as we're going through some of the characters and talking about what we hope to see and kind of where we left off with them. But I want to talk about a little bit what we know in terms of now these news articles and these news headlines that have come out today on social media. StarWars.com. Kelly Knox had an article that was pretty kind of high level, didn't really get into it much, but it was a good refresher if anybody just was kind of coming into this thing blind. But some of the stuff that stood out from these, and these are compiled from a number of articles, but the producers were talking about the long road ahead. And you gave me that. We have the posters that we picked up at Celebration that I think it literally said the long road ahead.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so they were teasing that even back then. And really what they were, to kind of summarize what they're saying, is that this isn't going to be an easy journey for them. They're going to face a number of challenges, a number of difficulties. It's probably, from what I've seen here, as well as some of the stuff we'll talk about a little bit later, we're breaking away from the side questing kind of formula that I thought worked well in season 1. But I know a lot of people were kind of, okay, here we go. It's another mission from Sid. It's another side quest from Sid. They seem to be breaking away from that. And from most of the people that I know that have seen the screeners, the first 14 episodes that have been released now for private viewing, they've all unanimously said that they've done a better job of breaking that mold. So I think that's going to bode well for it. But it does sound like it is going to be a very arduous kind of road ahead of them, and just trying to figure out where they fit into the galaxy.
Right. Yeah, it's gonna be more of a. I don't want to make it sound more serious because it's still an animated series, but It's going to be more character centric, I think. You're going to get more with the characters. I mean, now we've got a whole season under our belt and we're more familiar with them. And of course, with the Bad Batch specifically, we've known them a little bit longer than we've known Omega. But now we can finally get into, what is after you've gone through a series of events for a year, things start to change you. Things start to wear on you. Times feel different. And this is an era that just gets darker and darker and darker, right? Every day seems like there's just a slightly, darker shade that paints across the galaxy with the Empire. And so what does that look like? And how do they interpret that? How do they feel that? And how do they do that? Is they really just try to do, they're still jumping kind of gig to gig, right? They're still trying to just stay alive and stay ahead, one step ahead of the Empire. But what does that mean of where they're actually heading towards? I think that's the question we want to have a little bit clearer idea about, is what is driving them? What's motivating them besides just surviving? They seem, we're getting a feeling from like Echo in particular that he wants to get involved. This idealism starts to take over a little bit for him, and to where, okay, what does that catch fire? Does that cause a split in the Bad Batch or what? So I think those are the things that we'd like to see where that goes and have a little bit more clarity around. And really, I think, and that goes to the side quest thing, right? Of you get less distracted by that, but you can still perform quote unquote side quests, but they're still within the character narrative rather than I need a job and I need money. Right. So you have a little more depth to it. There's a little more meaning to it, even though it might still just be quote unquote just be a side quest of sorts.
Yeah.
But it means something. It contributes to something.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I agree. I think that's if you're kind of reading between the lines on some of those comments, that's exactly what they were saying. It's more about, there's much more depth to these side quests, and they don't feel just like one-off, quote filler episodes, right?
Right.
So whether that's through character development or kind of the overarching storyline development, they've done a better job of cleaning that up. So all good things there. The other things that I saw, and I don't, we don't spend a whole lot of time on here. I saw that some people have said that it was a little. This is one of the producers as well, said a little bit of Dark Tower, a little bit of Indiana Jones, and a little bit of Godzilla. The Godzilla pieces are, well, I love Godzilla, so whatever. It could be just another Zillo beast or something. There is
in one of the teaser, there's a gigantic beast of some sort that's coming out, right?
It almost looks like not to wax Dungeons and Dragons here, but it looks like a Dracolich, right? An undead dragon that's kind of just a skeleton of a dragon.
Yeah.
But it looks like a Zillo beast dragon or a Zillo beast skeleton of some sort. So
right.
Who knows? Okay. There's the theme of you help somebody no matter where you are when you can, right? And we kind of saw that in season 1, but I imagine we're going to see a lot more of that here. A lot of that's probably being driven by Omega, right? Just kind of
and Echo, and then maybe even Cody, right? And again, that kind of goes to the journey for Cody. What does that change actually look like for him, or does he change?
Right.
And same for Crosshair, yeah.
Yep. There's so from the teasers and trailers that we had, of course, we have Fee Genoa, who's the new character. Gungi, I think that was the one that kind of sent everybody into a roar at Celebration, and we continue to get him plugged on all of the teasers. So it does look like he's going to be, I would say, probably not a major character, but it sounds like there's probably going to be about 1 or 2 episodes in there that are probably part of an arc where we're going to go back to Kashyyyk, and he'll be a part of that. So
yeah. So for the folks who are like Gungi, this is the Padawan Wookiee Jedi
introduced in the Clone Wars.
Yes, yeah, that has the green lightsaber from the trailer where he uses the Force and ignites it.
And his hilt is made of wood from the Sherwook tree.
Sherwook, yeah.
So kind of cool. I like that. It's kind of organic, all natural lightsaber. So he's in there.
I thought you were going to jump into a commercial there for a minute, like Neutrogena or something.
Yeah.
The show is not sponsored by Neutrogena. Clearly,
no, not yet. We need more people to download this thing. There's we've got Rex coming in here. We've seen him. I mean, Rex is pretty cool, but we're kind of like, no, it's just Rex. He's in everything now. Right. We've got, of course, Palpatine. We've seen him in a number of spaces. Haven't heard him yet, and I guess the jury could be out on whether or not it's Ian McDiarmid versus someone else. My guess is it's Ian McDiarmid.
It probably will, because that's who it was in Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah, right. They brought him back for that, and that was, I mean, it's a small gig, but he may not say a whole lot in this one either. There was a quick scene in there where we got Bail Organa. I don't know if you caught that one.
Yeah.
Confirmed, I guess, visually. And then we got F and Cody, man. So, like, this is, we're getting there. We're going to tell this story, like whatever happened to him and how are things going for him and what is his. I mean, it's clear from the trailers that he's definitely aligned with the Empire still, and let's just talk about that scene real quick. When
Sure.
Crosshair mentions that their clones are kind of sorry, what was you have it? I don't have it memorized the term that he uses.
Right. Yeah. That they were questioning the order, basically.
Yeah, questioning the orders of the Empire. All right, we're kind of paraphrasing here, but if you look at Cody, he almost looks a little surprised, and I don't want to. I don't want to put too much into that because in my head, my fanboy head, I want him to come over, right? I want him to be reunited with Rex and not have the stain of what happened in, Revenge of the Sith, right?
Send a heartfelt note to Obi-Wan
Yeah,
saying sorry.
saying sorry. Yeah. So I want that to be fixed and not fixed, but just developed, right? Because we always liked. I mean, we all did. We loved Cody as a clone.
Yeah, he's orange.
Yeah, he's different. At least
He
like
has wires and stuff. Yeah, he's got a cool helmet. I mean,
he's like Newprin, little, yellow, different. Look at that. Jonesy's holding up the Black Series figure of Cody, Commander Cody. But we want that redemption story for him of sorts, right? I hate to call it that because that implies a lot, but I would like
but
to see him come back.
All the clones kind of need a redemption story of some sort, right? Kind of like, who was the one in season 1? Hauser.
Hauser, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get any more Hauser. I'd love to see Hauser come back, but with Cody coming in, does Cody fill that, kind of that narrative with Hauser, but maybe take it that next step finally?
Yeah.
Or maybe Cody helps with Hauser. That'd be really cool if they somehow got interacted and that's how Cody changes. I think that would be really neat.
Yeah. So there's so we got Cody. We'll, I guess, get maybe some closure, at least some more development there in terms of what happened with him and where he ends up at the end of the season. They appear to be on the run from the Empire. So I think when I went back and listened to our final episode that we did, and we were kind of talking about does the Empire care? Because it ends with the Empire thinking, I guess for all intents and purposes, that they're dead, right? They've sunk Camino, and we don't know if Crosshair told them that, hey, they lived and they let me live and they left me out here. They probably won't speak about how he got off that little platform, although we've speculated on that as well. So from that perspective, I think they're going to. So yeah. No. Anyway, sorry. So you had said that the Empire is still going to be after them because they're actively out there being a nuisance, right? So they're on the radar of the Empire at this point, not only because from their efforts, but because they've escaped them, eluded them in what was probably in their minds a surefire death by blowing up Camino.
Yeah, I'll probably walk back like the guarantees of some of that because, and I'm trying to remember that conversation a little bit more clearly, but I won't. But I think some of it is the Empire doesn't necessarily care about these small cells, and they took care of the major problem with Camino. Yeah, did they want to wipe them out at the same time? Yes. But with Camino being gone and that threat generally being tied up and being closed out, will they feel like they need to put any effort into them? I have no doubt that if either Crosshair sold him out again, or the Empire's like, well, if he survived, then they're likely out there too. And they just say it is. And then Crosshair is not going to lie either, right? Because he's loyal. So it's still his job to go hunt them down, most likely. But, are they going to expend as many resources as they were before? History says the Empire would be no for a while until they became a problem enough. So while they might be on the hiding on the outs of the Empire, maybe they're not being actively pursued until something else happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then Crosshair gets re-engaged. Because we kind of saw this in season 1 too. Crosshair kind of disappeared for a couple of episodes, right? And then all of a sudden he got back and re-engaged and, hot on the trail. So some of that's is that a similar formula that they follow this time? Or is there something else that are they really just going to be, no, they're a considerable threat because they're a highly trained, very custom unit. At the same time, they're just, in their eyes, Omega probably doesn't even count. It's just the other, 4.
Right.
So are they really that big of a threat? Answer is pretty much yes. But does the Empire view it that way?
Yeah, and I think I want to talk about this a little bit later when we get to kind of predictions. But when I look at episode 14, it's called The Tipping Point.
Yeah.
I think at some point they become enough of a nuisance, enough of a distraction, enough of a thorn in the side for the Empire that they are going to have to take action more than they have been up until this point.
Yeah, especially with whatever happens with Rex, right? And we'll get there, but I mean, that's all of those things probably start going hand in hand about
Right.
when that's
They're all
actually
contributing
possible.
factors. Yep.
Right.
Let's see. So, and there is a line. I think it's I forget who says it, but someone literally says a line. We're being hunted, or we're on the run from the Empire. The Empire's whatever. So that's been kind of established.
Right.
You know, we get that one line of Rex approaching them, saying, "Hey, could use you guys for one more mission." So not only are they getting missions from Rex, but they're getting them from Sid. And this plays back into one of the episodes, and I forget which one it was, where I think it was Rex and Hunter were kind of out there talking about it, and he makes a comment about returning the favor, right? I may call you if I need you. So they're kind of, you know, we said it. There's nothing that's ever laid out by Filoni that doesn't get picked up later down the road. He has every intention of picking up everything down the road, and so that we're seeing that kind of payoff here with that ask. Then there's this heist thing. So, and I don't want to. It's fine. I mean, it just seems like
How many heists do we need?
I mean, we had Solo. We've got there was a heist in Mando. We had one in Book of Boba Fett. Andor, right? So it's just it's fine.
We had one every week in Bad Batch, before. So
yeah. Well, they got to make money somehow, right?
True.
But this heist is it sounds like it's being propositioned by Repose, I should say, by Sid, and you know, and she keeps playing and toying with this idea of all you need is money. Right?
Yeah.
You get enough money, you can disappear. No one's ever going to see you again. We saw the same thing from Andor when he was talking about, you know, once he had this big payoff from that heist, he was going to just disappear. And we know that's not the case.
Yes, the idea of buying your freedom. It's not. It's a fool's errand in this era of the Galactic Empire.
Exactly. You can't buy freedom when the Empire's in power. There's just no such thing. Eventually, it will catch up with you. Right? No one is safe. No one's shielded from that.
Yeah, there's no rules effectively for the Empire to play by.
Right.
So,
now you sound like what's his name from Andor there? The I already forgot his name.
Oh, Lonnie? Luthen?
No, the manifesto guy.
Oh, Nemec?
Nemec, yeah, Nemec.
Oh,
he
wow.
said
starting to sound like an idealist.
So,
Remember, Albert, you just have to try.
Yeah.
Makes it all better. Just try.
But we've got the heist. And then the one thing I thought was really interesting, and so in the teaser, we got the very first teaser, we saw a Wookiee riding something, and we couldn't see it because it was kind of like from the forehead up of this beast that he was mounted on. The more recent trailer that was released here just in the last few days actually shows them, and they are these tiger monkey looking things, these beasts that are kind of native to Kashyyyk. And this was an idea that George Lucas had pitched a long time ago, and it never made it, I think, into Clone Wars. And I know Filoni's talked about this. I think at Celebration, he's gone on record and talked about how George had this really cool idea. It got scrapped and never made it. And for me, it's like, you know, you got somebody like Filoni who's still out there going, I've got a checklist of things that the boss wanted to do and never did them. And I'm going to make sure they happen. But it's just the weirdest looking thing. And I'm not knocking it because it's whatever, man. I don't really care. Right. It serves a purpose. They look very unique and distinct, but I find it very flattering, I think, for George Lucas anyways, to have his legacy live on through people like Dave Filoni who are just, you know, paying their respects, man, you know? So looking forward to that.
As long as it looks cool, I guess.
It looks cool. But tiger monkey is the best I came up with. I don't know if you would, maybe it's more of a monkey tiger? I don't know.
I guess it's better than monkey lizard.
Monkey lizards?
Except they're cats. I don't know.
We've had those. So that's kind of that. There was also on comicbook.com had like 3 articles.
Yeah,
they had a Michelle Ang interview.
Yeah, a couple of really good ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they were really good. They had an executive. They had an exclusive one as well, which we'll talk about. Well, there wasn't really a whole lot there, but it was kind of cool that they had their own little bit there. But we know there's a time jump, right? And we've talked about this. We can see it. I think they've done a pretty good job with Omega in characterizing. You can see it in her face, right? She does not look like the little girl that we saw. If you had to put a number on it, like I would say, I think we had speculated, if not confirmed, that she was somewhere around the age of 8 or 9 in the first season. Where do you think she's at in this one? How big of a time jump are we looking at here?
I think all signs suggest that it's about 6 months since the end of season 1, maybe 6 months to a year. So I mean, we're still in this year-ish range from Order 66. So I mean, but she looks older. I mean, kids grow up so much in this 8 to 12, 13-year-old range. They really start to change and grow. And Michelle Long had a lot of comments about, kind of a pseudo adolescent type of story and characterization for Omega, which again suggests more in that 12 to 13-year-old. But I mean, I'm guessing 10. I mean, we'll call it 10, something like that, which I think would be in the ballpark of a lot of these ages that we were guessing at.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm going to say 10 to 12. I don't think she's quite the teenager. She seems to be in that tween kind of era,
Yes. Yeah.
right? Where they're just starting to shed a lot of their innocence, because they're starting to understand that there are not, not everybody's a nice person. You have to be really careful about who you talk to and which sides you choose and what people are really after, right? All that starts to kind of wear away. And by the time you get to teenage, yeah, things
Yeah,
really
they
change.
start to question a lot more, right?
Yep.
And you get this weird, they're trying to figure out what their view of the world is. And I think
Yeah.
that was the one thing that the characterizations that Michelle Long really put out there, I think in a really well done way and in a variety of ways, is basically, while she still has that playfulness to her and that very youthful enthusiasm, that innocent naivete of sorts, but she is starting to ask more questions. She's starting to challenge why they do this. And she's always had that really good moral center, but at the same time, it's developing more of an idealism as well. The more that she sees and experiences, it's less about the wonders of the world and more about everything that's actually going around it, right? All of that new stuff is less shiny. It's less new. It's less important all of a sudden. It's just now it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's going to move into more, and this is where it's interesting the relationships that she's starting to develop. Where we saw her with Hunter and Wrecker before. As you start to have more idea, you start to challenge. You start to have a, how are you processing all of this information? How are you, where are your morals and ideals? Who are they going to align with? Who can you engage in those types of conversations with? And Hunter's kind of capable of some of it, but he's still more the parental figure. And Wrecker, love you, bro, but not really, right?
No, not
Not really the deep thinker.
Yeah.
So she starts to tease us that she's going to start to have different relationships with Tech and with Echo, which I think is really cool because Tech is like the ultimate data processor,
Mm-hmm.
like for everything, right?
Right.
But even he has moments of pause when she says something, and they still have a different relationship. And then we start to see Echo already coming through clear. We have to do something. He's more activist, right? And you can see where that could appeal to a young person trying to explore and right the wrongs that they see around them.
Yeah.
So I think it's really cool that we're going to get a different dynamic of these relationships because I think those are the more interesting ones. And we've been wanting Echo in particular to have more time in the sun. And so I'm really looking forward to him having those moments, let him shine a little bit. And that'd be really cool if it was him and Omega shining together and taking that relationship to a different place.
Yeah. And I think we got from that same article, or I guess that same interview, she does mention that at least Omega and Tech have an interesting deep arc together. So that'll be fun to see. Something else that I pulled out of here, she says you get the impression that Omega is very comfortable and the Bad Batch absolutely value her, and she has her own merits and her own skills that she adds to the squad. And I think this is what
Sounded
we
very
were.
Andor-like from what we heard from Tony Gilroy a little bit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
From comparing Andor season 1 with Andor season 2.
Season 2, yeah.
I very much align with Omega.
Right, and that's what you kind of want that from your characters that are just starting off some journey, right? You want to see them continuing to develop, being able to contribute in different ways, and that sort of thing. For Omega, it really is about finding her place within this team. She was sheltered, she was used. She was an adolescent, and they pretty much put her in with a babysitter in a few episodes.
Right.
Now we see her. She's running around with her bow. She's got some level of armor on, so it feels like they fully have endorsed her as a member of the team, and not necessarily this childlike figure that they have to just kind of watch and nurture and monitor and take care of, much like Grogu. So I think though, where the more interesting pieces, like what are her skills? Like what is she bringing to the team that the team just has not had? I think socially, there's probably something there, right? That being able to kind of talk to people and get through to folks on a different level more than these knucklehead commandos can do. I think there's probably some more nuanced approach to communication and relationships and stuff like that. But I would like to see her be able to do more than that. I'm not going to, and we joke about, or at least I joke about her being force sensitive or having the ability to, some unique ability that we've never seen before, because she is kind of like, the end, or she is, a different type of clone, but of the same DNA. There's got to be something special about her, at least in my opinion. Maybe there doesn't, but I hope there is. I don't know that it's going to surface in the series, but I would love to see something very different here from her.
Yeah, and Jeff was saying in the chat, just to kind of go here real fast, all this is why Omega is perhaps the most interesting Star Wars character going. Such an interesting approach to the coming of age trope.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a character. You ask what role does she fill within the team? I think that's the cool thing about Omega that we've talked about a few times, is that she can fill a number of roles. I mean, and some of it's just her physical size. She's smaller. She's still a child. She can still get away with things that guys with tattoos on their faces and scars and one eye, missing can't, or with one arm that's a screwdriver. I mean, there's only so many things you can do when you're, of age and when you look a certain way and you sound and behave certain ways, right?
Yeah.
And so she still has a lot of flexibility in that, not only in that regard, but now she's proving herself a capable person that you can rely on to back you up, that you can rely on to go do things, that is developing the skills to make missions successful and to be a difference maker and fill the void that they had from their sniper, from their sharpshooter, from their lookout, right? So in developing some of those skills, but being able to fill a variety of them is really important. Those jack of all trades, are really vital in a team. And sometimes they're not, you don't know how good they are until you miss them. You see this in sports a lot with like the slot wide receivers, the little guys. They do so many different things for you, and you don't know until they're gone. You're like, oh, well, how are we going to fill that void? That was a huge part of our team. We didn't even realize it.
So what if so speaking of tropes though, like I think it's easy for us to slip Omega, at least in our heads, into this like, oh, she's the heart and soul of the group, right? Or she's the moral conscience of the group. And I think she has those attributes, and I think she's going to do some of that. But to Jeff's point, she's just a character that has so much more potential that I would expect them to go a little bit more. And I really don't have any good theories about what that could look like. I think those will probably form up as the series moves along, as season 2 moves along. But yeah, I hope they don't slip her into, again, one of those tropes, because that's kind of, I think, what we would expect to happen. And while I wouldn't necessarily hate it, it would just be kind of like,
Yeah, I have a feeling that like her story will be very similar, or maybe the characterization of Omega will be very similar to Ahsoka. It won't be another childlike character coming of age. It won't be an Anakin, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing like that. It won't be some child that gets lost and all of it's like Din Djarin, and you just all of a sudden, jump to adulthood. It's going to be someone that they follow along and actually want to invest in. And you see move along, but they're not going to take any dramatic turns one way or the other. But they still they have this youthful idealism to them that keeps them true. But I like that she's the part that continues to bring the team together, because the team, while it works well together, and I always feel a little bit bad for Echo. You were talking about how Omega didn't feel quite like part of the team. She was being sidelined, babysat season 1. I got to be honest, Echo always feels like an outsider to me on this team, at least in season 1. It felt like more of a team in some of the other content than, him getting indoctrinated as an ARC trooper felt more like part of the team and part of Club Force 99 than anything else. And so some of this has been a little bit disappointing with how he's worked into it. So I would like to see her ability to bring the team together and be able to enhance the team in those different ways and accentuate the positives of each of the different attributes of the different members. I think is a different way of doing that. That's different than Ahsoka. Whereas Ahsoka did have those types of things, it was more of her and Anakin, her and Rex making a difference.
Yeah.
Whereas Omega has the ability to make a lot of different differences with different people and different characters, and influence people like Hunter at the same time, while also shaping her way of thinking with a tech and with an Echo. And even with the Sid. We haven't really talked about Sid, but her and Sid have a relationship forming as well, right?
Yeah, it's all monetary based, but yeah, you're right.
Sure, it's gambling oriented, but hey, it's something there, right?
Yeah.
Well, and violence. She's learning how to shoot.
Yeah, learning to shoot her bow. Well, no, you make a good point. Like I would want that as well. Like I would want that for Echo and for everybody else to kind of be shaped and molded and developed because of their interactions with her, right? I think that's going to happen, and whether it's interface and kind of laid out in plain detail, or it's more subtle and nuanced, I guess it's to be determined. There's another piece in here where she talks, again, going on with Michelle Long interview, that this is going to be a darker season. She says that. You read the paragraph, and I'm not going to read it here, but my takeaway was, okay, it's not necessarily darker in the way I thought it was going to be. When she said darker, I thought we were going to get into like dark content, but I think it's more darker from a kid's perspective, right? Being exposed to politics, being exposed to real world events that are happening, the good and the bad, some of the ugly that was kind of she was shielded from or not really asked to be a part of, right? She's going to be a part of this stuff firsthand. I think that's really kind of what she's going for. The one thing that stood out to me is that she's exposed to politics, and this comes up a little bit later in one of the other interviews, I think, from the producers, that they are going to lean into some more of the politics here.
Right.
And we know at the time this is the infancy of the Empire. This is pre Andor, pre uh, oh geez, what was
Kenobi.
the other one? What's that?
Kenobi. Yeah.
Kenobi. Thank you. So we're not at the height of the Empire as we are there. However, there are some things that are probably still kind of spinning and beginning to churn within the Empire, and I think that speaks to that scene that we see with Palpatine. Right? What is he doing to kind of set the plan ahead so that we can get to Andor content, or we can get to what we see in Kenobi? I think all of that's going to play into it. But yeah, nonetheless, she does mention that it's a little bit darker, and she's kind of just taking a more mature viewpoint. Her being Omega.
Right. And being exposed to things like politics. And you don't hear often people saying, I'm excited, we're going to go learn about politics. But I mean, that kind of comes across in this article a little bit.
That's not me. I've never said that, but go on.
No, and most people in their right mind don't. But I mean, there are some, they're very special. But I think with her, though, I think it's more about being exposed to the different sides of the galaxy and how that's confusing, how it's difficult to trust the people. And you see, I think it's important, just like it was in Andor, I think it's important to see how the Senate is working at this point to round this out a little bit for us. Now, how that fits within the Bad Batch story, I think remains to be seen. I think that's the concern, is how well does that fit? Why are they on Coruscant? You know, why are they even in this position, right? But presumably she's on Coruscant, it looks like. But I mean, they're subjected to politics every single day. Propaganda, all that stuff works into a political atmosphere.
Yeah.
So I think it's important, though, when you talk about the connections between some of the other content, you know, with Andor and Kenobi and whatever else, those subtle things are going to be the touch points with those. Nothing really major or obvious, I think, which I think works best, right? It's you have another notch in the timeline of what the demise of the Senate looked like, or what the tooling of the Senate looked like, or what, you know, the manipulation of the Senate, however you want to phrase it, or how many different ways you want to look at it. It's another notch on the timeline of being able to see what Palpatine was doing and how that's affecting people, and how that's changing the way that they behave, the way that they think, and the way that they trust one another. Because at the end of the day, that's what a lot of this is doing, is they are breaking bonds, but the Empire is also inadvertently creating newer ones that are potentially stronger than what were there in the first place.
Yep. No, and you say that, and I think of, you know, there's more of us kind of thing, right? Echoing
exactly.
Lando in Rise of Skywalker. Okay, let's see. There's also again, comicbook.com had an article that was a CB exclusive and talking about the connections to Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and literally just the rest of the universe. It just goes on to say that there are some connected stuff there. Not necessarily. I didn't get the sense that it was going to be like monumental, but at least staying consistent, you know, with what we saw, right? From that perspective is what we're going to see there. The reliance on the story group, I think, is good. One of the producers said that they were relying on the story group to kind of just keep them in line, but nothing was ever really pushed back. And we hear this a lot, right? They do give a lot of freedom to everyone to kind of tell the stories they want to tell, right or wrong. And my goodness, there was like
there's a lot of ways you can interpret how well they've done at this.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's all subjective, and everybody's got an opinion on it, but they do allow these artists and these creators to kind of create what they want to within the space they want to, so long as they don't infringe on other, you know, timelines and projects and all of that, right? And I think that's a good thing. So we'll see some consistency there. You know, as far as expectations going into season 2, one of them said the new season depicts how the Imperial Senate functions, an institution mentioned in the first Star Wars movie after the Emperor dissolved the body, but not seen until Andor in 2022.
Right. Yeah, we don't have any context about how the Senate operated or what was actually going on. We just have an idea that it's a lame duck by the time we get to Andor.
Right.
But we really don't know what happened early on. Like, did it function at all? Did they think they were functioning? And did it matter what they were doing? I mean, What were they trying to do? Was everybody okay with Palpatine's powers? Was there pushback? There's a lot of different ways you could take some of those angles, and they all fit within the broader narrative without trampling on really anything.
Right. Yeah, it's I think it's going to be a political mess, honestly. And I think what we'll
In a
find is
good way.
Palpatine
In a good way, right?
in a good way. Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, and I think Palpatine, we're going to find that, he's going to try to play by the rules, but I mean, if he's got to put the hammer down, he's going to do it. So, within reason, I guess.
Right, because presumably he hasn't relinquished any of his emergency powers that he had from Order 66.
Yeah.
If anything, they keep putting more things in place. And we got maybe a hint of this with Tales of the Jedi, the Ahsoka line after the death of Padme. And some of that was going on. Like you get a small hint of maybe some of those changes that have happened, that have taken place, that the changes that were put into effect that haven't gone away.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine it's just more of that. And we get that feeling in Andor as well, that they have systematically taken away liberties under the guise of doing something positive or protection, I guess, usually, or taking care of the people.
Well, and the other thing about Palpatine is, and when I say he can drop the hammer, like he has the ability, and he's demonstrated this already in a number of different episodes and shows, books, whatever. He has the ability to create situations which empower him, right? He
Yeah.
benefits from these situations that he creates. And so, while, I'm not saying he's going to go in and start killing people. That's not at all what I'm saying. I think he's going to create these conflicts that the Senate then looks like, or at least the people that are in favor of him go, look, we've been living pretty good so far. Like everything we've entrusted him with all this power, he's bringing back peace and prosperity. Let's give him a little bit more, right? There's a new conflict, again, spurred on by him, but let's just keep giving more and more and more until they realize they've completely made themselves, obsolete and no longer functioning and no longer relevant in the galaxy.
And you can see how subtle that still is, even when we get to Andor, with some of the scenes with Mon Mothma. That debate still goes on, and that very line of thought you were saying is very clear. That, well, not everything has been bad. Like you have to do some of these things. You have to sacrifice, for the greater good.
Right.
To quote two totally different perspectives on things, but it's going to be happening all throughout. So it'd be really interesting to see how that affects. I think probably Omega more so than the adults. But I think with Omega, that could be very important. I think it will be very important to her character and development, even if we don't necessarily linger on politics for more than a couple of episodes or something like that.
Yeah. So Jamie Lovett, again, one of the main writers, producers, in talking about the variety that we should expect to see. She says, well, there are plenty of politics and noir vibes in the Bad Batch second season. There's also plenty of variety. The season's first 14 episodes include an Indiana Jones-like adventure episode and a story involving the Star Wars equivalent of street racing. And we saw that street racing piece in the
Book
trailer.
of Boba Fett? Oh, wait, sorry. That's not racing.
No, that's the opposite of racing.
Oh, okay.
But that is so again, and again, this was confirmed. I'm sorry, Jamie Lovett is not. I misspoke. Jamie Lovett is not the executive producer. He is the editor that did the interview on comicbook.com. He went on, and there was a comment on the article that they had posted where someone was talking about the side quests and side missions, and he replied saying that he had seen this first 14 episodes and could confirm that there was much more variety than what we got from season 1. So,
yeah.
So all things are lining up there.
But again, I think it's still a similar vibe though, and I think people will still call it side quests. I don't know if there's any getting around that, but we'll have to see what it actually means though. But anytime we use the words Indiana Jones, I'm on board.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Especially ride that hype train with the movie coming out here in just a few months.
Yeah, very true.
Let's see, and then again, they reiterate that they feel like they did a better job this season, not feeling like it's a collection of side missions. But to your point, I think people are going to have that perspective either way, because unless they're giving us absolute canon, main thread stories, which would then whittle it down.
Everything is important. Yeah, everything is vital. We have to pay attention to everything that's going on.
Yeah.
I
mean, to me, that is a sign of the times, right? Where we can't have, like, people don't want long narrative things anymore. They want just give me what I need to know. Give it to me in 6 episodes. Cut
Thank you
all
to
the
everyone that
filler out.
listens to our long format show. We really appreciate it.
Right. Yeah. Those of you listening really appreciate it. But yeah, and it's indicative of a lot of. I mean, there's so many things in society are that way, right? TikTok brain, whether it's the death of MMOs because no one wants to commit to long term gameplay. They want to just go in, pop in, play a couple things, and leave, and never have to feel like you're thinking about it again, right? This is all kind of that culture that we've bred over the last 5, 10, 15 years now. So, all right, enough of that. I won't be the old curmudgeon here talking about what life was like back in my day.
But it's still 16 episodes. So, I mean, you
Pretty
have
good
to,
amount.
for an animated series, you have to expect there's a certain amount of non-crucial material happening in
Right,
certain episodes, right?
but you know what? Some of the jewels that come from just development, right? The character development. I mean, if all you did was stick to the main story, sure, you'd get a big payoff, and people would love talking about how it changes canon or doesn't change canon, or our perspectives on some of the stuff that was canonically created. But at the same time, I mean, how much of that
I
you
mean, Clone
lose
Wars
a
is
lot of
such a
that
great
connectedness.
example, right? Clone Wars is such a great example from a
Yeah.
series of the different directions that they took that when you look at it as a total package, there's great moments in there that you hang your hat on, even if you're like, well, I don't know if that was really central to the story, right?
Right.
I mean, you could use an example like Mortis or something if you really wanted to, but I mean, so it's okay. And that's the part that I'm not trying to advocate that side quests are a bad thing either. I think they can be fun and they can be great as long as we don't linger every week jumping side quest to side quest. Let's bring it back on the path, time to time to keep us relevant and make sure that there is something worthwhile with each of those that at least feel connected to it rather than we just need to make money.
Yeah.
I think we are aligned. We are violently aligned.
Violently aligned.
Yeah.
So, that's at least what I had here, I guess, in the notes in terms of what stood out. Was there anything that I glossed over, anything I skipped, anything you want to add to any of the articles or any other content you may have picked up on today in this like media blitz that we had?
No, I think those were the primary things. I think, again, the Michelle Long part of the comicbook.com interview was really good. So I'd encourage people to go out there and check that out. We'll try to link that in the show notes. You can go all the different sources of information that we pull from. We'll try to have that linked. Give credit where it is due. But again, I like that we're going to get a slightly, she used darker tone, I think, overall, but I'm with you. I think it's just a bit more, I don't know, saturated, a little heavier tone, right? And it just, the weight starts to feel because we don't have the youthful enthusiasm of Omega, saying, what's this? It's dirt or grass or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Seeing all the green. We're not going to have those moments of seeing something for the first time through a new set of eyes.
Yeah.
Now she's got that experience. So we'll have a little different feel to the series, which I'm curious to see how it adjusts. I think it's going to do well. I think it will pick up on those vibes and move us forward and I think it'll be a good stepping stone for the series.
Yeah. Quickly back to the chat. Jeff did mention, he says, it all matters, I think. Those episodes still provide moments between characters that make the big moments have emotional weight because we see them connect.
Exactly.
And I think that's where I agree 100% fully. I think again, to use your example of the Clone Wars, like a lot of that stuff wouldn't land the way it did had there not been some of those quote filler episodes, some of those connected kind of segue episodes, right?
Right.
All of that really paints such a love for the Anakins and the Padmes and the Rexes and the Clone Force just in general, right? We would not have that sense of kind of connectedness and the emotional weight of the Clone Wars and seeing what happened when they brought that last season in, and now retrospectively going back and watching the Clone Wars movie, or Attack of the Clones, I should say, right? That is like, I mean, it's just the weight of that is so heavy now because we had all those episodes, and not every episode was about the Force. Not every episode was about Palpatine's rise to power. It was just about how do you live in this environment and how do who are you as a clone and that sort of stuff. So all of that does have a lot of emotional weight that wouldn't have come from it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, okay, well, let's get into the last piece. I guess our last segment here. Let's talk about some of the questions that we have going into season 2, and I want to start with one of the bigger ones that I know you've been really trying to get off your chest here. But who will play Joruus C'baoth in this season?
Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher Lloyd. Okay. No,
Is that not the voice you heard like when you read that book though?
yeah, I think at the time,
And I think actually the audio drama or the audio book, I think may have had that spin on his voice as
oh,
well.
really?
I
Okay.
think it's been a long time, but
All right, we'll come back to that here in a little bit. No, okay, no, more serious. No, what are you? I guess what are you looking forward to this season? Like, what are some of the things that you and we can kind of or I guess pair that up with the other question here about like what did we see at the end of season 2 that we felt either went unresolved or we didn't really get to spend enough time with that you hope we'll kind of revisit here in season 2.
yeah, I think Crosshair surfaces to the top. Resolving that. What is it that he's looking for? Like, what is it that he thinks the Empire really truly gives him that that his family and that his brothers and that his sister haven't or can't? And what changes that? And I think, and by extension, I think it'll be something similar maybe for Cody. And so if I narrow it down to just really one or two things, it's really that, because that's what the story was built on initially, right? It was this fractured family, of a disagreement in belief systems, obviously some influences beyond their control, but also what they were capable of moving beyond and achieving together and not leaving each other behind and resolving some of that kind of the damaged ego, but also just, the blood on Crosshair's hands at this point too. Right. And I guess you could, by extension, you could say that the other way too, of how they've hurt him, but still, I want to see that resolved. I think it would be great to have that actually done in season 2 in whatever way it needs to go, but we actually get true clarity around and get true resolution around that relationship with between the 6 of them.
Yeah.
Is there a top one for you or a top 2?
I mean, it's for me, it goes back to the characters. The same with you. Definitely, I have Crosshair. I mean, I've had to narrow it down to like 3. Crosshair is one of them. Cody's another. And then I really want to see where Omega goes, like just her journey. She is kind of like the titular character, I would say,
Right.
even though it is the Bad Batch. It's kind of framed around Omega. So, I just want to see where her place is. I want to see more about that. I want to see if we get into some of the history there, what her relationship is like with them being the older parent or the older kid, the older sibling, literally here. Right? She's older than them. And then, and if we start seeing some of the aging process happen with the clones, I'd love to see some of that happen. Like, what does that look like? Because I think we're going to be going into that era. Like this is going to, it feels like we're going to cross into that era of those clones starting to get older. And maybe that's what Cody's talking about, right? Where they're starting to churn because, the chips are not working or they were never tested for these long-term kind of lifespans that the clones would have. Right. So I'd love to see some of that, right? More of the clone mythology, almost in terms of the perspective of their lifespan and their creation and all that. I think those are the more interesting pieces that I'd like to see.
Yeah, and again, I think with Tech and with Echo, giving them more opportunity to shine, and have them really come to the forefront and to play a more key role in it. I think, and especially for Megan, it all ties to Omega, right? Because she's just
Right.
she's the glue at this point. She's the rubber band almost, right? All of them kind of flex, around her in whichever ways. And so, but I'm really looking forward to having their moments to just to shine and let D. Bradley Baker really expand those characters in the way that he's expanded Hunter. And I know Wrecker's been pretty light as well. And I don't mean to, we kind of harp on the beefcake, but at the same time, he's kind of had his moment, right? He did the room for Omega. He shared his stuffed animal with her and made her feel comfortable and gave her a different level of love and support that she needed. So we feel like we were satisfied with that. But now we need the rest of the family to get in there. And then again, she had a moment with Crosshair too. We haven't even talked about her and Crosshair.
Yeah.
Like, how does that relationship, does it find any kind of resolution, right, with the two of them? Or is it really, truly pretty much Crosshair and Hunter that's the real issue, the real problem at this point?
Right. So, not in the show notes, but something that you brought up in our last episode was you were talking about, would we see a second Clone Wars? Right. Not to label it as such, but I mean, it feels like the pieces are all here and it feels like you could infer that.
You mean from like a series perspective, or?
Oh, no. I just meant like a, the clones uprising, right?
Oh, gotcha.
And that being kind of central to the story that's happening, right? The overall story and just another thing that maybe Palpatine wasn't anticipating and has to extinguished as quickly as possible. But do you see that playing kind of front and center in this at some point, or is it just kind of like a side type deal that really doesn't get any action or play?
I'm kind of impressed. I actually got something kind of right, maybe. It doesn't happen very often. I think it's a real possibility. It might be a very, very light insurrection type of thing, less so than a war or anything like that. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's common, right? I mean, when we saw in Obi-Wan Kenobi with the clone trooper, despondent on the ground, groveling, asking for money, a veteran. I mean, and what we see in Rebels, I think it would be really cool to see this revolt of sorts, or this uprising, or this mass exodus, and this really quest for survival across all the clones, not just Clone Force 99, what we had with Cut, and some of those things coming and working their way back in. And so I think that is a real opportunity, especially with what we've seen from the scenes with Crosshair and Cody, and what we've seen with Hauser already. There's opportunity, and not to mention just Hauser, but the ones that he inspired, in that scene with Hera and the family. So, I mean, I think those are the things that I would love to see. I think those are all real possibilities. They're on the table, I think, at the very least, because, I mean, the recipe is there. I mean, it's set up.
Yeah.
You have all of these clones still out, and we don't know how many clones still exist, I think is one of the big questions, but presumably they haven't put them all down, and they've not decommissioned all of them, even though they have been, but we don't really know what they're doing with them. So if something comes about that the clones are actually being put down in some way, in more of a euthanizing kind of way. What's the right word for there? Like euthanasia anyway, but putting them down like an animal. Yeah. It's like Andor. That stuff's going to cause mass rebellion pretty quick.
Well, I think people that would, like, two people that come to mind that would definitely be impacted, and regardless of where they feel like they stand with the Empire, are people like Crosshair and Cody, right?
But Crosshair doesn't seem to care, though, does he?
Not yet,
Yeah.
right? But if the orders start coming down from up high, Palpatine, whoever, Rampart, and stating that the clones are unreliable, right? So now they're on the defensive, and I can see them trying to argue with, no, I'm different, and who cares about the track record? For me, if I'm Palpatine, it's easier to say just get rid of them all, right? Don't take any. We're not going to take any chances. They're a risk. They're unpredictable. Yes, these guys have been doing good work for us, but they are clones and they still are viable. They have the potential to turn against us. Why expose that risk, especially with what they know and the positions of power that they have? Just get rid of them. And so, and if I'm Cody or Crosshair, I'm suddenly now betrayed. Like, I would feel betrayed by the Empire, especially someone like Crosshair, who's kind of all in, right? He's put all his chips into the Empire. And so that would be a catalytic type of event, I think, that would kind of spur the potential for them to maybe switch sides, or just go and go their own way and go be the lone clone or whatever it is. I mean, who knows what's going to happen there? But I think there's a real target that could be placed on their backs simply because they are clones, even though they've done a number of great things for the Empire.
Well, it's very much a continuation of Rampart and Crosshair from the first season too, right? Where that was effectively what was going on.
Yeah, arguing
Crosshair,
which was better, right?
Yeah, he was on a very short leash, right? And if Crosshair stepped out, he was the next one to have the hit put out on him for. So I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And again, it shifts into more of a survivalist type of mentality. But the question still remains of, would Crosshair then go home, or is he on his own?
Yeah.
And so again, you get into the layers of what happens when you get into that, especially when you get into a survivalist mentality. I could see where he would just go it alone.
Yeah, or maybe pride plays into it too. Like, it seems like he's
absolutely.
a very prideful kind of person too. So.
Oh yeah, he's got plenty to spare.
Right. So I can't see him joining immediately, right? Maybe not this season. I think he would go his own way, and maybe eventually they meet up again or something. But
yeah, and he's already kind of resisted it once, right? When they were teaming up on Camino, and they've had these opportunities to work as a team again, and it just still works. And you're like, it works, brother. Just go with it.
Yeah.
Just go with it.
Yep.
But it doesn't work because he's whatever it is he can't let go of.
Still holding on.
Still holding on.
Okay, so what about so what are there any characters that we've not seen either in season 1 or what we've seen so far in season 2 that you would like to appear or see appear besides Hondo?
Besides Hondo.
We predict Hondo Naka and everything, and at some point we're going to get this right, Jonesy. He's going to show up in a new series, and we are going to post this across social media platforms for at least 3 weeks straight.
We called it years ago that he would appear in something.
Years ago, yeah.
Oh goodness, who could show up here? I mean, Tarkin seems like a pretty safe bet that he a high degree of opportunity to be there. Will he be there? I don't know, but yeah, he was clearly in season 1. He holds the reins for Rampart, so I think that's one character we could easily see. That's pretty safer bet. Fennec Shan would be an interesting one. Her or Cad Bane, to see if they make a second appearance. I think Fennec Shan. I mean, the Ming-Na Wen train is getting pretty long. People are on board with that, and people love Fennec Shan. So I could see where Fennec Shan comes back in. There's a connection with Omega to an extent. So I think that there's another opportunity there for her to show back up as well.
Mm-hmm.
Any on your list that are highly likely or wishes?
I mean, there's some like the characters that we've not seen.
Thrawn.
There is one, but I'm going to defer that to when I get to the Death Watch question.
Okay.
Because I think that person will play a part in that. So I'll leave it at that.
Interesting.
But yeah, I'm all in on Hondo. He's going to show up. Okay. So, cool. All right, let's talk about, in all seriousness, let's talk about cloning Nala Se and Mount Tantiss, because this is a real thing. I've joked and theorized that at some point they were going to reboot retell the Heir to the Empire saga, right? And I was working on it today, some more theories about how we get there and all that, and it's all for fun. I don't sort
of. To the right of, if you're watching the live stream, to the right of Albert, there's really a whiteboard with a bunch of 3M sticky notes all over the place.
Yep.
And pins and markers and everything else.
Yeah, and I just move them around like literally every hour. But they've kind of broken the seal here on Mount Tantiss, at least. It may just be a name only. I think more importantly, more front and center is this idea that Nala Se has been taken by the Empire, right? Effectively kidnapped, or if you will, held hostage. The Galen Urso of cloning, and she is being put at Mount Tantiss to do something, right? They talked about, they were kind of kissing her butt, saying they were appreciative of her work and they had some great plans for her. That's kind of how it ended. The obvious thing that kind of rolls into mind is, of course, something like Palpatine's contingency, right? Cloning of him, the Snoke test tubes. Do we get into some of that, some kind of a Jedi thing? We've talked about maybe cloning for Palpatine to actually have a host. They would have to figure out a way to not only clone his body physically, but then somehow imbue it with the Force in some way, right? And so this then leads into, again, I'm recapping what we talked about in our Patreon episode for anybody that's not a Patreon member, didn't get to hear it.
Right.
They would potentially be looking for characters, characters with high midichlorian counts.
Like they were doing with Grogu, right?
Like they were in Grogu, right? Because if you're going to imbue somebody, or maybe you got to have a super high midichlorian count in order for that to work. You couldn't just take any, kind of run-of-the-mill Jedi, take their blood, use it, and splice it into genes and make somebody Force sensitive. But if you had somebody like an Anakin or a Grogu or a Yoda, maybe there's a potential there. And, that's what Nala Se is going to begin to work on, which then again would lead into the Snoke clones. So I guess, how much of this do you think is going to play into it? And I want to give you one other thing to think about. A lot of the screeners that have been out so far are that we've done 14. They've released 14 episodes to anybody that's got the screening privileges.
Right.
They've not released any more. Now 14 is quite a bit.
That's all but 2, right?
All but 2, right? So I think I would expect if you've seen the 14, you probably have a pretty good understanding of where the series is going. But I wonder just how much of this is going to be picked up in the series. So far, it's been nothing in terms of the teasers, trailers, comments. And of course, everybody's under NDA, so they can't say anything about anybody that's seen the first 14. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think this is going to play front and center? Do you think it's something that we would see, but maybe picked up later on in the season? And just how relevant, I should say, do you feel like it's going to be for season 2?
That last part's a really loaded question. That was really tough to answer. Do I want this to come into play? Absolutely, yes. I think when you with the way we left off season 1 with Nala Se, we need to come back and revisit it. She is part of the Bad Batch story. She's very much part of Omega's story. And so I think we need to come back and revisit that and see what's going on. I do believe that a Snoke type of moment or something along those lines is ripe to be in this series. The part I have a harder time with is like them getting material from a Force sensitive person. because then you're bringing Jedi back into things, right? Unless you're getting it from Palpatine or Vader, right? Which is possible. And that was a question I had for you, is more like, would we see Vader somehow creep into the series, even if it's a cameo, right? Because again, he's out there, so it's reasonable that he might be. But but I'd love to see Mount Tantiss actually take more relevance here and establish something. Give us the new baseline. What is the new, for lack of a better word, Heir of the Empire baseline for Mount Tantiss? Like, what's going on there? Tell us what we need to know about it, so that we can start moving and figuring out what that looks like forward on the story wise, whether it's Bad Batch or anything else, that we want to explore with it. And so I think this is a great opportunity for us to be able to do that. When will it happen, though? I think this is potentially a second half of the season type of thing. And again, it might be very much that it doesn't even come into play until the last 2 episodes, because you probably don't need to linger too much on it. And do you even need to know? You don't need to see them hunting, I guess, is maybe my point. I'm kind of thinking through this a little bit more.
No,
you don't need to see Vader hunting Jedi to get material or anything like that, right?
Right.
Things can happen off screen, and when they're there, they just have it. And that's what it is. And now they might need more. There might be limited supply or whatever it might be. But at the same time, they've got it. They're doing stuff. And then you can see what they're actually doing and how far they are. You can follow that storyline, and you can keep it really tight, and it doesn't get belabored. But I like this idea a lot, though. I'd love for this to come back into the series. I think it would be a really great way of wrapping up season 2. So my money is on it's being those last 2 episodes, and that's pretty much it. I don't think it'll show up anywhere else.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. And again, I'm looking at the titles, right? The Summit, and then Plan 99, right? Being, the Plan 99 being whatever it is to
maybe it's the Empire's. Maybe it's the Empire's plan. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's the Empire's plan, right? So I would expect them to kind of shelve this to the last part of the latter part of the season. I would think I don't know that you may not be able to get away with holding everything back for just the final 2 episodes. They probably hint at some things, right? Mid-season, 3/4 of the way through the season, and then kind of give you the big payoff at the very end. And I'd love for. I mean, this is a very good way to end this season. I don't know if we're getting any more, honestly, of the Bad Batch. I would expect most of these characters are going to live on. It kind of plays into my Death Watch question here in just a second. But I would like to see Tantiss used more. I want there to be some weight to and relevance to the cloning project.
Right.
Nala Se is a very important, pivotal character in this kind of field, right? And if there's any one person that probably could solve for how do we get a Force-sensitive clone created, it's going to be somebody like Nala Se, especially since they've already leveled and sunk Camino. There aren't a lot of people out there with that experience anymore, right? I think in Bad Batch, I think it was in season 1, they did mention there were other species that were into cloning, but nobody had the expertise and somebody like the Kaminoans, right?
Right.
So I think all that makes sense. The other part that, again, to kind of to bring people up to speed on Heir to the Empire, Tantiss, and what we covered in the Patreon episode is Tantiss is also is the place where Emperor Palpatine started to house a lot of the Jedi relics and artifacts that he was starting to accumulate, right? He would put them in Mount Tantiss. There was a guardian that was there that was supposed to be protecting it all. And eventually Sabayoth, which is this kind of crazy clone Jedi, went and killed the guardian, and he became the guardian of Tantiss, right? He was kind of like the sole defender of that Tantiss and served the Emperor in that capacity. All of that, I mean, I think you could replace a Snoke character, right? You just change the name and it all still plays out just fine. But I would like to see, I mean, not necessarily, I don't know that it'll feed into the storyline episodes up until, the first 14 episodes, but, this idea that we're hearing that Palpatine is still collecting this stuff, or starting to collect these Jedi relics and artifacts and Sith artifacts and relics and housing them in Tantiss, I think would do well to kind of just align with the legend stuff. But then it also helps reinforce what we see Luke doing, which is post Return of the Jedi, going back to all of these places and undoing that work and recollecting all the stuff that Palpatine was hoarding, like the Jedi texts and lightsabers and the stuff that we saw in the comic books. Some of the stuff that now I'm going on a far limb here, but stuff that's happening in season or wave 2 of phase 2. They are talking about some very specific, powerful Force artifacts that I mean, if you're a Palpatine or even a Jedi, really crazy to think about what you could do with these things. But even just kind of making those as cameos, right? Referencing that those could potentially be stored there, thanks to Palpatine. I think all of that would be really great for me as someone who's, really into all this stuff, but I don't know that it's going to land very well for the general audience. So
Yeah, I mean, it lines up pretty well, though. I mean, the only thing is it's more of a imperial research facility all of a sudden rather than a temple. So I think that's maybe the main difference. But I think overall, though, the idea behind it all lines up just as well as it did in Timothy Zahn's original trilogy. And so I think you can take a lot of it, like we've done with everything else in Legends. We can take the idea, we'll twist it, but the idea of it all still lives on, and that those premise still survive, and the characters that we have make sense within the canon that we have now, right? And so I like that. It's all everything you said. I'm actually more or less on board with, believe it or not. And so I think it's all real. I think it's all realistically possible. I don't think any of it's really that super far fetched to where you could poke a hole in it and say, well, no, this is impossible for it to happen, or it just doesn't make any sense, or it's not likely. Because with Snoke, he's an extension of the Emperor. So it would make perfect sense. And if they're researching things, again, like you said, I mean, the High Republic stuff maybe, but I guess the idea of the High Republic, things. We saw this with like the Bogan collection too, right? I mean, you have so many drops of things where they're collecting artifacts.
Yeah.
Throughout, whether the Jedi or the Sith, it doesn't matter. There's so much of it. When are we actually going to put it all together and actually use something that we get from that? And the closest we've had is High Republic with the rod for the leveler.
Mm-hmm.
So when are we going to get something else that actually has a relevance to that? But again, I think it all goes back to primarily to the cloning, though, with Nala Se and her importance to this. You're right. She's the lead designer for the clones for Kamino. She's one of the few Kaminoans left, potentially in the galaxy. We don't really know, but one of the few there. And like you said, they were the premier cloners across the galaxy. So there's still others out there, but they weren't near as advanced as anybody else. So it makes sense that she's going to be the one that's going to bring this forward. So why would she not be the one tasked with the Emperor? And I love the idea that even if we don't get those scenes until episodes 15, 16, we get some sort of hint that something's going on, kind of like the Death Star in Attack of the Clones and some of that, where there was ideas of the great weapon or this great idea.
Yeah.
We get the little breadcrumbs, and while they don't have to ever come out and really say it overtly, it can be just one of those like, what are they up to? What are they up to? And you're like, maybe they're up to this. And then they're like, these Cantina Cast guys are probably like this. I'm pretty sure I heard that on the story group.
Yeah, they're doing that, doing all of this for our benefit, which we appreciate. So
I have a tab that says Our Padilla on there.
Yeah. Let's see. Jeff says, to go way out on a limb, does Mount Tantiss get highlighted in the end of the Bad Batch season? Because we're going to hear about that location in Mando season 3 when the shows overlap. So
maybe Mando's going to be a lot of. I think the only hole in that one maybe is all of the time spent on Mandalore.
Yeah.
So it depends on how much that lore overlaps. But again, I think it's always possible.
Yeah, I mean, they would run into a Tantiss that would potentially at that point be just run down, right? It's abandoned or something. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's still running interactive. But yeah,
of course, that suggests that we're going to get Luke Skywalker in Mandalorian season 3. But anyway, digress on that one.
Rob in the chat says, I could see Plan 99 being the Bad Batch, sacrificing themselves for the greater good, like 99 did in the Clone Wars. Speaking of Clone 99, yeah, a good way to end a series.
It would be.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good segue cool. into our Death Watch here.
Yeah. Well, honoring Clone 99, right? Or honoring 99 by calling it Plan 99. I think I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so Death Watch, kind of another staple here for these final hype episodes. Who do you have on your Death Watch list? Do you have anybody that you feel like is going to not have to go, but will go? How about that?
Well, Nala Se is probably at the top, to be honest with you,
because
again, I think at some point they need to lose that. Otherwise, the cloning would probably be more successful with Snoke and company.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one. I think one or two. I mean, we talked about this last season. Do one or two of Clone Force 99 of the Bad Batch need to go? We thought Hunter was going to be that person, and that was more of maybe a story driven thing to help Omega with her, with her development or with her growth and experiencing loss, because everything Star Wars has to have loss in it.
Mm-hmm.
But does someone still need to go? Does Crosshair still need to go, or does Attack or Echo? Right? I mean, Echo seems like he's always on borrowed time, unfortunately, ever since his days in the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, does one of them have to die? I guess is the question I'm gonna have for you. Has to is probably no, but should any of them die to make it feel like there was something like real about all of this?
Yeah, I think so. That's, and it's not part of it is, it's part my own personal preference. I know we've got a Patreon episode in the backlog to kind of talk about character deaths in Star Wars, and talking about that great debate between George Lucas and
Lawrence
Kasdan, right? But I think it would benefit Omega, as much as I hate to say that. The question is who, and so this plays into, for me, like who would pop up that we have not seen so far or expect. So I want to preface this by saying that I think if this happens, it would happen in those last 2 episodes. Maybe a little earlier, but I would prefer it to be in the last 2. And it would be such that the Clone Force 99 has gone through and done enough to get on the attention of the Empire, right? Similar to like Obi-Wan Kenobi, similar to other Jedi, anybody else who's really just made a nuisance of themselves. Andor is probably going to get there at some point, right? And Mon Mothma and all that. But if the Clone Force are on the radar and they've eluded the Empire that far, and the Empire, Palpatine is just said, "I'm done with this. This needs to stop. It needs to end." Me thinking we're pre-Inquisitor, right? So
no, we're not.
well, I mean, it's still early, right? It's still early. I mean,
it's early, but they're there. They're there in Force too,
right? But what I would like to see is him actually dispatch somebody like Vader, right? We saw that with like Rebels, right? Yeah. We didn't see he'd sent the Inquisitors out, and eventually he's just like, forget it, Vader, get out there, go put this down, this little cell down, right?
Right.
And of course, Ahsoka intervenes and all that. But I would like to see Vader pop up, and so that would be my surprise person that would pop up. I would like to see this battle of Clone Force 99 versus Vader, and the casualty being Wrecker, like some kind of like, you know, the opposing, the unstoppable force versus literally the Force coming together, and what kind of match or what kind of contest somebody like Wrecker could do, especially if it's, you know, if he goes crazy berserk, really exerts himself, does something he's never done before, and really goes all out, full mass, full strength kind of thing to protect somebody like Omega or even the rest of the clones in some way, like him sacrificing himself or at least just dying to save the others. One, it's a character that I don't think a lot of people would expect to happen. Two, that would have a huge impact on somebody like Omega, because she sees him as a child, and suddenly he's no longer a child. He's this mature person who's just given up his entire life. And three, doing so, that I think I would like to see him put Vader on his toes a little bit, like somebody like that. We saw it with who was it? We saw it in the comic book where Vader went up against somebody that was just like, what's his face? The Jedi. Yeah, do you have him?
Yeah, Kira Infilla.
Yeah. So somebody like Infilla, right? Who was not only just better at lightsaber combat, it was a big dude, right? Fighting him. And it was like he was overpowered, overmatched many times in that battle. And we saw that as a weakness for Vader. Again, that was, you know, still kind of earlier on, and he was still kind of getting his legs, no pun intended. But you know, somebody like Wrecker going up against him and kind of having this final battle and dying, that's kind of where I would hope to see somebody pass. At least one of the main characters anyways.
Yeah, and I think Crosshair kind of fits that potential as well when you think about Vader. Of he would, you know, use his sniping ability to distract Vader from Omega or whoever was attacking Omega. Vader's an interesting one because he can do so many things, but also challenge him. Like the guy that doesn't miss is against a Sith Lord that can either deflect him with his hand or with his lightsaber with ease, and then snatch him out. And then how resourceful they get. I think this is where all of the Bad Batch are interesting, because they're all so resourceful that they present a unique challenge for Vader in their own different ways. And so that you can almost make an argument for each one of them that they would present a really unique difficulty for Vader to beat them. Now, Vader would beat all of them at the same time probably as well, but it's a matter of that challenge of distraction, of giving Omega or giving someone else that opportunity. And I think with Crosshair doing it and Crosshair sacrificing himself in that kind of way, I could see where that would be putting him on the Death Watch list. And again, I think when you look at some of these characters, you just kind of feel like they're on borrowed time already, because when you make all these decisions, the only way of redemption, if you will, is to give your life. It seems like there's no redemption with staying alive anymore.
Yeah,
I guess there never was, but
yeah.
So that's another possibility there as well. And again, I like it that Crosshair would be doing it on behalf of Omega, because giving back kind of that generosity, or that way of that conversation they left out on the platform at the end of season 1, and being able to say that, they're their family too. They need him too. And just pulling on those strings and kind of recalling that moment between them a whole, year prior, if you will.
Yeah. So okay, so just quickly on this, I threw this in here, but are we going to hear good soldiers follow orders?
I think some variation of it.
Variation thereof.
Yeah.
Okay. Raise your crest moment.
Why don't you start us off on this? I don't know if I really have one, but you go first. Besides Maz Kanata showing up.
Well, wouldn't that be something?
Well, she's what they're building in Mount Tantiss.
Yeah, they're trying to clone Maz Kanata in some way. So I don't know. I don't really have a great moment. Going back to Omega. And what is her ability? Like, every one of them has an ability, right? One's a tracker, one's super strength, one can't miss, the other's like technically savvy, et cetera, et cetera. And this is really going out on a limb, because it is a Razor Crest moment, something that's completely out there, completely unpredictable, and should never be predicted. But I would like to see, I would like them to take a different take on Omega and not make her Force sensitive. Okay, I'm not saying that. Like, I don't think she has the ability to control the Force. But what if we haven't seen her ability yet? And I'm just thinking maybe it's because she's not been around somebody that is Force sensitive in some way. But what if she has the ability to, again, not of her own accord, like not consciously, but she's like this, what is the creatures in Heir to the Empire? The Salamari or whatever they are, right? Yeah. Islamiris. Like, the ability to, she's just kind of like this negating force, right? Again, she's not controlling it, but whenever she's around, it has an impact on anybody's Force abilities of some sort. Like, how important would that be for somebody like the Palpatine or the Jedi or whatever else? And, again, it's bringing in the Force. So I do think at some point we are going to get the Force in this one. I'm fine with it never coming up in Book of Boba Fett or Mando, but this is Filoni. It's the Clone Wars. It feels like we got to have some of this at some point. So I'm trying to figure out a way to, outside of Vader just showing up and, getting into a battle with Clone Force 99, how do we introduce the Force of the Force and put a unique spin on it, and then give it to somebody like a character that would really, none of us would be expecting. And, she would not, it would be an ability, like somebody going up against Vader, going back to that scenario. Like, what would that do to him? Would it expose him? Would it make him more vulnerable? Would it make him go into a chokehold or use the Force to choke Wrecker, and she's there and that's enough to negate it, and so he's able to kind of power through it and still get to Vader? I'm making really crazy stuff up here, but
I can hear the collective fandom going and losing their minds right now. Actually,
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting proposal.
Proposal.
Well, I mean, part of me is like, is that too similar to the levelers, right? I mean, granted they're eating the Force effectively, but is it too similar to something like that, or is it perfectly similar to something like that, where it's a different variation of that, of how that could be very different? I'd like for her not to be Force sensitive. I don't know. I just think I like her being normal, but being exceptionally normal, if that makes sense. There's something about her that is special. I'd like to see what that actually is. And Michelle Long kind of made a comment in there about superhuman powers, basically, and that she doesn't have any, but one of hers, but she kind of beat around the bush a little bit. And I don't know if that was intentional or if it was just a poor choice of words. Then she caught herself. But I mean, it seems like there's, where usually there's smoke, there's a little bit of fire, at least.
Yeah.
So there's something there, maybe, but What that might be, though, I'm not entirely sure. It would be cool for it to be something unique, though. But for me, I think Jeff is making a similar comment in there. He kind of hopes it's not. Oh, he says he doesn't hate the idea of Omega being force sensitive. The idea the force flows through all living things, a clone being able to channel it, ties back to that first TCW episode without. Yeah, true. There you go. Jeff has made sense of everything for us.
Yeah.
It is possible for clones to have the force, so why would she not be the first one, I guess, right?
Maybe.
It's possible.
It's possible. Like, I mean, the ability, again, the being force sensitive and having the ability to control the force are not mutually exclusive, right?
Right.
Maz Kanata is a good example. I hate to bring her up.
Guardians of the Wills. I mean, there's
Yeah.
tons of examples out there, right?
Sure. Plenty of examples out there where people are force sensitive or imbued with the force in some way, but just don't have the ability to do all that. So that's not I don't think it's too far of a stretch. You know, I think if she was a force sensitive and someone who was able to control the force, this, you know, you could chalk it up to, okay, maybe it's because she was cloned and, you know, normally children at a very young infancy, Ahsoka age, right, are displaying feats or abilities that are identifiable as force sensitive, right? Force users.
Yeah.
But because she's cloned, you know, maybe they get around that by saying, well, she wouldn't develop her abilities until, you know, these tween years or something, right? And similar to, like, you know, mutants, I guess, with the X-Men, right? They don't show up until a little bit later on in life.
You want to
So
know if she's showing, to paraphrase.
right. So, I mean, that could be one way they get around. Oh, she's not been force sensitive up until this point, but now she is. I could go either way, but if I had to make an argument for her not being force sensitive and then she's still, or I said I should not, an argument for her not being able to control the force, I would say she could still be force sensitive. It just hasn't been identified by anyone because who would identify her at this point, right? Until she runs into somebody who has the ability to do so, or she's put in a situation where suddenly it manifests again against her own will or not. I don't think you would never know, right? So,
right. Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, as far as Razor Crest moment, I mean, I kind of cheaped out and said, you know, maybe Vader would be that moment, just popping up, and it wouldn't necessarily be a surprise because presumably they would, you know, kind of send him out there. But
yeah,
as far as surprises, I was like, what could really truly kind of get us, you know, or kind of hit us really hard, except for a death. And I think it would just be an appearance of a major character like that.
yeah,
Unless Thrawn, you know, comes into it in some form or fashion. Thrawn makes an appearance, even if it was a, you know, like a post credit type of scene.
well, you can't have Heir to the Empire without Thrawn.
True.
So,
Yeah. So depending on how far they get down that path, maybe he's there. But again, now the timelines are all jacked up with all of that now. But but again, he's been in Republic space in this time. I'm not really. I'm trying to remember the current Zahn novels, but I have a feeling that he's probably occupado. But I know he's on assignment into the Republic space after the Republic, so it wouldn't surprise me if he did show up.
Yeah.
I think he's got to be on the list, especially if you're going to flirt with Heir of the Empire.
yeah, and to be fair, like, I want to be clear about something. The Heir to the Empire, like, theories and all that, this would just be the beginning. We wouldn't, like,
yeah, this is not the series. Yeah,
no, like, this is not the series. And even still, like, if they were to kind of lay the seeds for something like that, a retelling of Heir to the Empire, it wouldn't conclude or have its big finale until we got to, like, the time of Mando, right?
Yeah.
Because Snoke would still be around, and that would give us the Sabaoth. That would give me an opportunity to wax my Mara J. Luke Skywalker theory that they still had, that he was married. You could bring Thrawn easier, that's not a word, easier into the fold if it's set later, right?
Maybe
Right
Mara
now,
Jade is the one protecting the temple as an Emperor's hand.
yeah, it could be Mara Jade as the Emperor's hand. Let's see. In the comment, Derpy 501 says, I will wait for Mando Star Wars content. Not a fan of Omega. That's fair.
That's why you have us.
That's why you have
listen to
us.
us.
We'll
That's
tell you all
all
about
that's
it.
all that matters. Yeah.
Jeff says, slapping the force on a character can be a very lazy way out. I just think Omega could make it a unique situation. Rob says Thrawn would be great. And Kathy says that she agrees with the lazy writing attempt there if they went that route. So, I mean, what do we know? We don't know anything. So, okay, so we did. I think that's everything.
Yeah.
Was there anything else? I guess anything. I mean, we didn't talk about whether Crosshair is chipped or not chipped.
He's not chipped. He said he took it out.
Yeah. Do you believe
Yeah.
him though? Because there was we talked
Yeah, I
about in that
believe him.
last episode was there was 2 moments in that final episode where he was holding his head.
Yeah. I mean, now it could be having side effects because that happened in the Clone Wars too, right? With oh gosh, who was the one that had it taken out and then
Oh,
ended up dying? Have a couple times.
that was
Fives? I think it was
yeah,
fives. We'll
yeah.
call it fives. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, so we know that taking it out doesn't mean you're cured and you survive. Sometimes your body doesn't react well to not having it. And he's been injured before as well. So, but I take him at his word. He had it taken out. It would
Okay.
make sense for him to have it to take it out, and for him to make that conscious decision. I think makes it all the more interesting.
Let's see. I was trying to go back to my notes that I took for that last episode. Oh, the last thing. Maybe we can just end on this. Jeff says, if we're doing Heir to the Empire, just include a scene of Han setting someone on fire by shooting a bottle of whiskey. That's all I ask. It's very Indiana Jones, by the way. Whiskey. So there's we had the question in there about we were speculating whether or not Mando season 2 or the Book of Boba Fett would have would pick up any of the cloning kind of routes that were laid out in season 1 there.
Yeah,
And that
pretty hard no on Book of Boba Fett.
well, no, that was that was a no.
And again, not really seeing the opportunity in Mando right now.
Yeah, we had that scene. Was that season 1 or 2 though, where they found the cloning facility?
That was in season 1. Yeah, I think. Yeah, because that was when they're liberating Navarro.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember now in season 2 if we had anything cloning related.
Yeah, and they just kind of dropped that whole thing, didn't they? They never quite came back to it.
They did, but my theory, or I guess my suspicion, is they probably had a very different plan with. I think they had to redo their plan for a couple of things. Number one, movies were really not going to happen. That's been kind of we're on the path. At least at the time that season 2 came out, they were like full course ahead with all television. Okay. 2, that Rangers of the New Republic thing. Who knows what was going to go on there? That got scrapped. They got rid of Cara Dune. I think that really just kind of changed a lot of things. It felt like they were kind of planting the seeds around some kind of a cloning event, maybe leading up to like some of the stuff that we've already speculated and theorized on. But there are other ways. If even it's just like a comic book, right? They might mention something like that, and it's never picked up in that comic book again. But it gets more streamlined in other comics, right? Running parallel or something like that. So maybe it does show up more in Bad Batch season 2, or some new series that they've got planning the work, or whatever this event that was supposedly going to happen. Maybe they've retooled that in some way.
Right.
But nah. So, but yeah, I guess that's a hard no on both of those. I don't think we saw anything. So yeah, I hope they do revisit it, because it certainly was intriguing. And like we've said many times before, Dave Filoni doesn't really plan anything like that without trying to without a payoff at some point. So,
right.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence that could lead to that here that we've seen so far. All right. I guess we'll end the show there. I mean, we're only a few hours away from the first 2 episodes, but any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, it's time for us to watch it, right? I mean, this is get about an hour, I'm guessing. I'm guessing each of these episodes are probably about 22 to 25 minutes, something like that. That's about par for the course, I think. 16 episodes. It'll play more like a Clone Wars, like we said. So no surprises there, I don't think. So prepare for about 40, 45 minutes tonight. And let's get it started. That's where the fun begins.
All right. What about you got any shout outs for the people that joined us on the live show tonight?
I absolutely do. Jonathan Sky, Lauren, JJ Skywalker, Jeff Englehart, Music Train, Jorge, Alex, Katya, Rob, Derpy, 501st, and Kathy. Thank you everyone so much for coming out to the live stream. If you're listening to the show on the podcast, we do this on Sundays and Thursdays is the schedule that we're going to try to stick to for the live streams. I know we say that a lot, but this time we're really for real. 2023 is the year. We're going to do it. Probably, maybe, hopefully. Yes, we're going to. But cantinacast.com/YouTube. If you want to go directly to go subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell so you get notified. But everything's on cantinacast.com. You can go out there and see our upcoming streams, past streams. You get all of Lauren's Jedi novel archive. I said it right.
Yes. Good job.
and janitorials and all sorts of other great stuff out there, and as well as access to all the podcasts, both in the past, even before we did live stream. So lots of great content out there. Please go check it out. And if you're interested in Patreon, again, huge thanks to all of those folks. We do have lots of great content coming out this year for all of that as well. CantinaCast.com/Patreon will give you a link over to that. And again, Chewy and the Pogs. You won't want to miss it.
Pogs. Okay, well, with that, we will be back here on Thursday, so in 2 days, to kind of talk about the first two episodes.
Break it all down.
We'll break it all down, talk about everything we got wrong, and speculate on everything else we plan on getting wrong in episode 3. And then we've got a Patreon episode coming up here as well very shortly. I think it's this Sunday we're going to record that, yeah?
Yep.
So we've got a Patreon episode going as well, and that'll be to be determined. I think we'll likely pull something from Bad Batch. If not, we've got a couple other things that we planned out.
Yeah, we want to see what we get tomorrow night or tonight, I guess, and see if there's something really cool to really focus in and hone in on like we've done in the past.
Yeah. So 2 more shows. If you're a Patreon member, there's 4 shows technically this week with Lauren's J&A, but you've got at least 1 more on Thursday, and then that Patreon episode coming here on Sunday. Okay. New year, new intro. I don't know if anybody caught that, but guess what I have? I have new credits, updated credits as of 5 p.m. today. So all of our Patreon members, thank you. You guys will see your names here in the credits, and yeah, we'll leave it there and see you guys in 2 days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.